Okay, hello everyone. I hope you're enjoying your coffees there. We're just going to get started up again. We have a presentation from Sharon and Niall, who are here from Nottingham. Nottingham run a mentoring program that has been really laser targeted on providing quality relationships. It's less about the number of people and more about the facilitation of those individual relationships. Sharon will be talking about how they're looking to scale that up within the framework of ensuring that those relationships stay at a high quality level. If you can help me, please welcome Sharon to the stage.
Great. Well, thank you for the welcome. Sandra said, I'm Sharon, I'm Associate Director in the... You see, you said I was on them, wasn't I? I'm Associate Director in the Careers and Employability Service at Nottingham. We're quite a big service, so there's 70 odd of us in careers. So you'll appreciate that mentoring is just a teeny tiny bit of what I get involved in. And that's why I brought Niall with me, who you'll meet shortly, because Niall is going to say a little bit about some of the very detailed parts of how it works. So when there's difficult questions, Niall's the man, hopefully, that can answer them. Before we go any further, it would just be good for me to know, I've obviously had a look at the delegate list and I can see who's supposed to be here, but how many of you, just by a show of hands, are from Alumni Relations departments? Okay, so how many from careers? There's some of us here, we're all right. There's a few of us, great. So that in itself, I think, is a really interesting thing, because the programme we're going to talk to you about, we work really closely with Alumni Relations, but it's absolutely led by the Careers and Employability Service at Nottingham. But I will tell you more about that in a moment. What I wanted to do, though, was start with a clip.
Benny.
I'm what? I'm being your goddamn slave is what I'm being, man. Now we made a deal here. So you're supposed to teach and I'm supposed to learn, remember? For 4 days I've been busting my ass. I don't learn a goddamn thing.
You learned plenty.
I learned plenty. I learned how to sand your decks, maybe. I wax your car, paint your house, paint your fence. I learned plenty, right?
And not everything is as simple.
Oh, bullshit. I'm going home, man.
Danielson! Danielson!
What?
Come here. Show me sand the floor.
I can't move my arm, all right? What are you doing? What are you... Ow! Ow, what are you doing?
Now show me sand the floor.
How did you do that?
Shut up!
Sand the floor.
Hey, stand up. Show me sand the floor. Sand the floor. Sand the floor. Big sucker. Sand the floor. Sand the floor. Now show me wax on, wax off. Hey.
Wax on, wax off.
Wax on, wax off. Hey, wax on, hat. Wax off. Concentrate. Look at my eye. Lock a hand. Thumb inside. Wax on, hat. Wax off, hat. Wax on, hat. Wax off, hat. Wax on. Wax off. Show me paint the fence. Up, down. Up, down. Up, down. Other side. Look eye, always look eye. Show me paint the house, side. Lock wrist. save. Yes. Show me wax on, wax off. Cat! Show me paint the fence. Show me side to side. Show me sand on floor. Look, I always look, I come back tomorrow.
So this is the point that Niall is very relieved because I said to him if the video didn't work, you'd have to demonstrate. So you can relax now. Okay, so I should say actually I asked my team if they could think of a kind of jazzy title for this presentation. You know, the things that kind of grab you on conference presentations. And Branka, who works with Niall, said, man who eats fly with chopsticks achieves anything. I'm like, yes, but that's not really going to tell anybody what we're talking about. So we have the guy from Karate Kid. We have Martin Luther King. We have Bill Gates. We have Harry Potter. And we have Michael Jackson. Okay, so have a think about each of these people just for a moment. What is it that you think links all of these people together? Any thoughts? Blank looks. The clue is in kind of what you're sitting in today. Thank you, yes. So apparently, when you when you read up about any of those people, I do appreciate a couple of them are obviously fictional characters, but you can see in each of those people the role of a mentor in them. And if you were to Google somebody like Martin Luther King, there's other people who have been placed alongside them or who they came across very much in their early years, who they would accredit as being really quite fundamental to where they find themselves today. And I think that's probably the same for a lot of people out there. So with that in mind, I mean, most of this presentation is going to be me talking to you about the Nottingham story, but just as a little bit of an introduction to that, and so that I'm not doing absolutely all of the talking, can you just for a moment think about and write down on your bit of paper somebody in your own life who has been fairly fundamental in your journey, in your sort of professional career, shall we say, to date. So make a note of who they were. It might be a family member, it might be a friend, it might be an early manager, it could be a whole host of people, but just kind of get that person in your mind's eye for a moment. When you've done that, just write down a few words about what it was about them that has been so memorable or helpful or encouraging to you. So just take a minute and scribble a few things down. I'm going to get you just to talk about this for a moment in your table. So it'd be good if you've got somebody in mind. But think about what it was about them that means in a way that they're the people that have come to your mind now. Okay. Literally, just for 2 or 3 minutes, either on your tables as a whole table or in 3s, 4s, whatever, just share with each other who those people were and what kind of things it was about them that meant that they've had that impact on you. Okay, so just have a quick chat on your tables about that. Okay, let's pull that together. It would be good just to hear a few of the words that people were using to describe the people who had this influence on their lives. So would anybody like to just shout out the kind of qualities that these people had? Integrity, yeah. Yeah, they took the time. Consistent interest, yeah. Loyal, yeah. Supportive, yeah. Okay, yeah, yeah. Yeah, ambitious, encouraging, honest, was that? No, honest, yeah. Likeable. Always a good start, isn't it? Yeah. Inspirational, yeah. Visionary.
We have led by example and a great coach.
Okay, yeah, yeah, definitely. So, in many ways, we have all had the impact of a mentor. It might not have been in a sort of formal mentoring relationship, but when we look back, we can see that in some way we've had somebody who has acted as a mentor in our lives. And some of you might have had the privilege of acting as a mentor for somebody else. I think there's quite a lot that you get out of that personally as well. So we have a graduate training scheme at the university where we have a couple of graduates that rotate round. I was a mentor for one of those. And when you kind of live their journey with them, I sort of did it officially, if you like, for the year that he was in the programme, but he now works permanently at the university, and we still have that kind of relationship. Then it's a really rewarding thing as well. And I think as mentors, you get a lot out of it. Obviously, as mentees, they hopefully get a lot out of it. And that's what I hope to be able to show in terms of what's important to us in the Nottingham experience, is that it's a kind of win-win for both parties. So I'm just going to outline what I plan to go through in the next half hour with the help of Niall. So just so you can understand the context of where we're at, I'll talk about a little bit about the history of where mentoring at Nottingham has come from, and then some of the building blocks that we had to put in place along the way so that we could create the scheme that we've got today, some of the design principles, if you like, behind it. Niall's going to come up and talk about what I've termed as the nuts and bolts of the current scheme, so that you can sort of understand how we make it work on a day-to-day basis. I'm going to come back at that point and tell you about some of the challenges that that's given us, but of course some of the success stories, and there's definitely been some success stories along the way. And then a little bit about our future plans, and that's very much where Illuminate feature in partnership with us in. So, to begin, a little bit about our history to begin with. The story seems to begin a long time ago, way before I joined Nottingham in 2011. So, it's something that they had been talking about, they being the careers service and alumni relations, for a few years at that point. And there was a joint project which had been undertaken with Alumni Relations. And they were looking at ways of using the alumni community in helping the career journeys of our students within that mutually beneficial relationship that we've just been talking about. So recognizing that there would be a benefit for the student, but also that for the alumni getting involved, there would be a benefit. I think, now clearly I'm not a professional from that area, but from talking with colleagues in, we call it the CARO office, so Campaign Alumni Relations. So when I talk with colleagues in CARO, I sort of get the sense that around about that time, there was much more a sense of alumni could be giving back to the university by investing their time in some way, as well as financially. And as you'll all be much more than I am, the point in somebody's life at which they're going to give back financially to the university might be much further on. But actually, when they're in their early career, they're perhaps not in a position to give back financially. But what they might want to do and be really enthusiastic about doing is giving back from a careers point of view. And working in some way with current students. Sorry, that's not that clear slide, but what is in each of those circles is, what I'm trying to show is the stakeholders that we had to sort of involve and take account of in this project. So from my point of view, we have the students. That's really, really important that whatever offer we came up with was something that worked for the students. Clearly, alumni or CARO were very concerned and interested in how this project could best serve the alumni community. There's obviously that wider context of the careers department itself and the Alumni Relations CARO department itself as well. So there's a number of different lenses that you can look at this through. And we work very closely with CARO, but I think we would both quite openly say that our priorities are quite different in one way. But there's definitely that point where they intersect, if you can imagine them on a sort of Venn diagram. And that's the space that we work in. And it's really important, I think, in this to make sure that is where we are working together. And we're not trying to force this mentoring thing to be something that doesn't work properly for one or other of us. And you'll see what I mean a little bit as we go through the presentation. So when they did this sort of stop and have a look at what we were doing back in 2008, there was a number of recommendations that came up. And bear in mind that this was 2008, so some of this you'll think, well, we've now been doing this for ages, we know this, and I would agree with you. Some of this is not rocket science now. But certainly one of the first things was, well, let's create some alumni profiles for students. Let's create those sort of case study examples that people can look at and see, well, I did this degree, what have I gone on to do? That was being done. It's not that it wasn't being done, but perhaps it was being done in quite a patchy or inconsistent way. So there was something more of a project. We introduced something called the Careers Alumni Masterclasses. So I know most universities in some way or another offer ongoing careers advice for their alumni. At Nottingham, we offer it for life. We accept that as somebody goes later on in their career, perhaps the extent to which we can help them when they're in the experienced hire market might be a little bit different. But in theory, an alumni of the university can always come to see a member of careers or can speak to them on Skype or telephone, whatever. What we did, though, was we introduced a series of masterclasses. So these tended to be something that worked particularly for the relatively recent graduate community, I would say. So we would come down to London, or we would host in Nottingham skills sessions on using LinkedIn for networking, on even sort of CVs, but in the experienced hire market and that kind of thing. So those were events that went on through the year. We started to engage alumni in social media campaigns directed at students, and you see that quite commonly now. So one of the ones that we've got ongoing, or about to go ongoing at the moment, is asking alumni for advice to give back to current students. And I've seen that other institutions are doing something very, very similar. There might be a nuance to the question, but it's effectively the same thing. But the big one was that we were going to run a pilot e-mentoring scheme. So very much small pilot, and you'll see the numbers in a minute. They don't sort of overwhelm you in terms of volume, but it was an acceptance or an interest, a recognition, if you like, from both careers and Caro that this was a really good thing to do, and that we would work on it together. It would be led by the careers department, but we would work on it together because we both had that common area of interest. So I just wanted to be clear about when we talk about mentoring in this space today, what we're talking about, because I recognize that different institutions talk about mentoring in a whole variety of different ways, and that kind of big spider's web that we were talking about earlier can get created. So I recognize there can be student-to-student mentoring. I know some institutions are working very much in the student and applicant space and getting mentoring relationships working there. We actually we don't do it ourselves, but in the university we have some mentoring between students and pupils. There, of course, can be mentoring between colleague and colleague in that sort of professional mentoring space. Probably the one I've missed, and forgive me for that, because I'm student-focused, is alumni to alumni, so we would have that kind of thing. But what we are very much focused on is student and alumni. If my colleagues from Caro were here, they would say that once we've got this up and running and working well, we would like to be able to roll that out, so it's alumni to alumni mentoring, but we're not in that space just yet. And we're focused in on the current student, alumni, that mentoring relationship as our key priority in this area. I've put this slide up. It's an extract from one of the bits of publicity that we have on our current e-mentoring scheme. And it was really just to show you kind of what it was focused on and almost what it's not. Because I think it's really important on mentoring, particularly when you want to get buy-in from other departments. So particularly if you're an alumni and you want, if you're in alumni relations and you want buy-in from careers, I think it's really key to articulate, if it is students involved in this, what it is that you hope that they would get out of the relationship. So this is about students having a mentor who's an alumni working in a profession that may be of interest to them, that they might want to find out about, and that mentor could give them that unique insight into that industry that they might not otherwise have got. And so I'm sure in the same way as at King's, we have mentors who would be quite recently graduated, but we have very, very senior mentors as well. And I guess that's where it comes to that unique insight where they wouldn't necessarily get that sort of connection. You might think, you know, why do I need to be so clear about what it is? Actually, part of that is to be able to sell it in my own department as well. So those of you that work in careers, I'm sure would share with me a nervousness if this ever became a conversation that somebody should be having with a careers advisor instead. That's why it's quite clear or important to be able to say, this is what it is. We still have our careers advisors. They still do all that kind of work. But if somebody has identified an area that they're keen to work in and they want to speak to a professional in that area, then this could be for them. So you can see that our first scheme, that's 2010-11 and 14-15. So it started, this is active pairs. So when we were talking about, you know, how many people are registered on systems, this, that, and the other, this is active relationships. So somebody who has completed the mentoring scheme, and I'll explain in a minute what that looks like at the moment. So we deliberately started with a very small pilot. And as you can see, it kind of sort of grew slightly, and then it sort of hit the 106, 100, 138. For us, and exactly as Kings were saying, it's in many ways in careers, it's not about the numbers, because actually these are small. We have 34,000 students at Nottingham, so these are a small number of people. The number that I worry about more is this number, and the sort of dissolved relationships. Dissolved sounds very grand, as if we've kind of said, that's it, you can't mentor each other. That will be where something hasn't quite worked, so maybe somebody registered too quickly, maybe the mentor wasn't actually that interested in mentoring, and it hasn't quite gelled. So if I'm being honest, that's higher than I wanted. We quite liked it when it was around the couple that just hadn't quite worked. So for us, that quality is really, really important. I thought you'd be interested in seeing some of the sectors that people were interested in getting mentors from. I think that was from the most recent scheme. It changes slightly from year to year, but not that dramatically. So you see the same sort of themes coming up. Of course, one of the interesting things is we don't necessarily have alumni who have volunteered in those sectors, so sometimes there can be a mismatch between the two, so that's just something to bear in mind. So in terms of the building blocks that were put in place to allow us to do the pilot and then to grow it into a slightly larger scheme. So colleagues in careers at that time, again, I still wasn't there, so I can't take any of the credit for that. But they certainly immersed themselves into the world of alumni relations and into building very strong relationships with colleagues in that area, which I now benefit from today, which is great. So that meant attending events, it meant about Alumni Led Events, it meant talking about the concept of mentoring, the fact that we would really like to get mentors from the alumni community. We have, as yourselves no doubt, an alumni magazine that goes out, so we would profile the scheme in that and again, harness some interest. We got the schools on board, the academic schools, so that they knew what we were doing, because of course that's important, because they can be a referral route as well, so our own colleagues can be referral routes for the scheme, but certainly the academic schools can. And often, although we're trying to get this much more sort of coherent at Nottingham, but often some of the alumni relationships sit very much at the school level, and they're not necessarily known about by alumni relations. Now, we're trying to write that as a university, but it's something to be aware of, that making sure that the academic schools know about it is helpful. And also, like yourselves, no doubt, we have the fundraising campaign when the students telephone up ex-alumni, and part of that is obviously about trying to secure donations for the university. But we made sure that we were asking them about, would they like to get involved in helping current students on their careers journey? Would they like to get involved in e-mentoring? So we had it very much out there as an option for alumni to give back to the university. And we began creating those career profiles that we were talking about and putting some structure around that so that we were getting consistent stories, consistent case studies back from the community. And something that the students could look at, because if they're going to have to choose a mentor in some way, which I'll come on to in a moment, they need to know as much as they can about that person, and is their story one that they can relate to? Is it one that they want to hear more about? So in terms of the design of the scheme as it was, and to be honest, how it has been pretty much until now, and the change process that we're going through, there were some basic principles involved. So from the case studies that students could look at, they could identify 3 possible mentors. And from the identification of those mentors, they shortlisted the 3, and then Niall, or a colleague of Niall's at the time, they would have looked at matching the student with the most suitable mentor. One of the reasons why we were really keen to be involved in the matching process, and as you'll see we've had to change slightly, but one of the reasons that we were quite keen in that is that we found that students often would go for the mentor who worked at that glitzy organisation who they had heard about, they knew about, but they might have been less inclined to pick somebody who perhaps worked at a local, small, medium-sized company who had a fantastic story, had a fantastic career journey, who could really help them. But because it wasn't Mars or one of the big organisations, they just didn't kind of see the relevance of it. So that allowed us to make sure we were using as many of our mentors as we possibly could. It was a relationship built solely on email or occasionally Skype. Interestingly, I was interviewing somebody in this area the other day, and they were very much saying, well, it has to be face-to-face to be a valid scheme. And it was like, well, you know, we've got 250,000 alumni around the world like yourselves, and we want people to be able to mentor wherever they are in the world if they're prepared to give back in that way. So that's one of the main reasons for it being email or Skype. I also think face-to-face just opens up another possible issue there that is just a bit complicated. How do we safeguard that? I know our students are adults and all that kind of thing, but I still think there's issues that can come up there. So by having it as email or Skype, that makes that easier. We have had occasions when students that are local, alumni that are local have met up, and we've hosted that in the careers department. But it's an absolute handful, so we very much say email or Skype. Principle was that we would grow slowly, and that we would learn as we went, and we would build on it. We were working at the point up until now very much on a fixed term commitment. So we would kick off the scheme around about November, and it would run through till March, April. And again, when you think about the academic year, it's no surprise that that's when it is. So first weeks of term, students aren't particularly interested, but it allows us to attend various events and talk to people about it. If it went on much longer than that, then clearly it's exam time and they're not going to be interested either. I think from the alumni's point of view as well, it's helpful if it's a fixed term rather than something that I've got to do forever and ever. This sort of gives them a get-out clause, as it were, but it focuses in on that quality. We do some work with the students in advance. Niall's going to talk about that, so I won't steal his thunder, but just to say that the onus is on the student to make this work, and it is confidential, so they know where we are if they need us, but it is confidential. I've already said we focus on quality, not quantity. That's quite driven by careers, that particular thing, I would say. And then there's other elements to the programme, but at that point, I'm going to hand over to Niall just to talk about the sort of nuts and bolts of the programme, and then I'll come back and talk more about the challenges and the future.
Hello everybody, everyone hear me all right? It's nice to see so many of you here today interested in e-mentoring. I'm going to talk you through a bit more of the operational day-to-day side of the mentoring scheme at Nottingham. That's my job title and my name. So when we are first dealing with students, when they've been accepted onto the scheme, one of the first things we do is organise a series of welcome workshops which take place during the first week or two of the scheme. There are a number of these workshops at different times and different locations, so that all students can have the opportunity to attend one of the workshops. They're not mandatory, but they do have a very good turnout. So at these workshops, we go things like guidance on using a mentor, what would be kind of an acceptable etiquette. So we encourage students to keep it relatively formal at first, and then adapt to casual conversation as time goes on. There's a number of recommended subjects, so things like networking is a very common one, practical guidance on things like the recruitment process, especially graduate recruitment process, something students are very interested in, and making professional contacts within the industry area. Another common question students like to ask is on what the day-to-day role is like. So we recommend that. We also recommend that students contact their mentors about twice a month. Some students contact mentors much more often than that, some less often. So we just have a recommendation. Students can do what they like, really, whatever is suitable for their needs. In terms of ongoing support, we let students know that we're always there for them. They always have our email address and our phone numbers. Issues do arise. We're always there to deal with that. So we let students know. So during the duration of the 6-month scheme, we conduct 2 feedback cycles. The first cycle takes place about 1 month into the scheme, which we call the first feedback. This feedback, it's basically a very short questionnaire that goes to both the students and the alumni, and just is there to make sure that everything's going okay, to make sure that the student has actually got in touch with the alumni and that the alumnus has responded, to make sure that there aren't any big issues. And that's about it, really. It's a very short survey. The main one is the final feedback survey, which takes place during the final month of the scheme. So 6 months scheme, so it takes place during the 5th month. This covers a lot of areas. It's quite extensive. Again, it goes to both students and alumni, and that's where we get our main kind of feedback to, so we know what questions students are asking, what forms of communication they've used, if they've done things outside of email, basically. Lets them know what they thought were the most useful parts of the scheme, what they thought wasn't so useful, which is great to us when it comes to advising students in the next year. One of the most important elements of that is we ask students and alumni whether they would recommend the scheme to other students and alumni, and I'm very happy to say that one of our proud statistics is that every single year more than 90% of students and alumni have said they would recommend it to others, which is obviously fantastic. So when it comes to the end of the scheme, we contact students to let them know that time's almost up. We give them a kind of recommended email to send to kind of thank mentors for all their help. The students do tend to write their own email, which is more tailored to their needs, but it's just there for general kind of guide. We encourage students to thank the mentors. They all do that, thankfully. And just to let them know that if the student and the alumni are happy to, they can continue talking to each other on a more informal basis outside of the scheme parameters, which is something that quite a lot of students do, which is obviously excellent. So this marks in the scheme. We, as I say, give pints and positive ends. What we do as well is we run a reflective workshop towards the end of the scheme. So students come into a session kind of like this one, and we all just sit down and go through some questions on presentation, again, covering what students found useful, what they would recommend we do in subsequent years, which is, it's very useful. You get some good feedback from the survey, but it's very useful to talk to students face to face. And from this year's reflective workshop, actually, had a student come up at the end, thank us for the scheme, and say that his mentor had been able to offer him an internship within the mentor's employer company, which is absolutely fantastic outcome. So we also do a reflective log which students can complete, which basically is a skills evaluation. So it asks students on a few key skills areas, such as networking, professional competency, things like that. Ask them to rate themselves, how they felt they performed on these skills at the start of the scheme, and then ask how their mentor helped them to improve on these scales. Pretty much all students who complete the log report substantial improvements in both their skills and in their self-confidence, and they feel much more confident that they'll be able to secure a graduate job. We also run a module as part of the Nottingham Advantage Award. You guys probably have similar kind of promotions. Nottingham Advantage Award is basically a careers-focused award where students participate in careers-related events or activities, and these count towards the Nottingham Advantage Award. The mentoring module can count towards a third of the Advantage Award. Basically, you don't do anything too strenuous, but if you are on the Nottingham Advantage Award, attending reflective workshop, completing the reflective log, attending the welcome workshops, and completing both of the evaluation surveys are all mandatory for completion of the award. And just before I hand back to Sharon, are there any quick questions on the kind of nuts and bolts on the scheme? It's just Nottingham at the moment. Ningbo do run their own scheme, which we aren't too involved in at the moment. Long term, we may consider expanding out to Malaysia and Ningbo, but that brings further complications. So at the moment, it's just Nottingham.
I'm just going to say it's quite interesting. In Ningbo, they've done, so for those of you who don't know, Nottingham has a campus in China and a campus in Malaysia. They do a kind of group mentoring thing. So they have one alum coming in and actually mentoring a group of current students. So whenever they feel ready to run this kind of a scheme, then absolutely we would advise them on the setup of that. But no, this is UK focused. No? No, sorry, go for it.
The majority of your students who are using the mentoring system, are they UK students or are they international students? And do people want international mentors or Chinese mentors? Your international students, is there a match?
In terms of the demographics of the scheme, we actually have a slide on that coming up. In terms of international mentors, there is a demand for them. I mean, that's one of the great things about being an e-mentoring scheme. We do have a lot of international mentors available, and take with those is very good, especially in terms of we have a lot of students coming over from China and Malaysia, so they use a lot of our Chinese and Malaysian alumni. We also have students who specifically ask for an international mentor, so students who are interested in going overseas after they've completed their studies. So there's a lot of demand for mentors who are in the United States and the EU as well. Right, so this year we had about 140 mentoring relationships. We had about 350 registered mentors. So over the years, obviously not all mentors participate in all years. Of those 350, about 250 have participated in the scheme at some point, with 140 currently active.
140 were actually matched.
Yes.
Have you got, do you
so there's about another 140-ish that are active but not matched, but a number of those have been used in a prior year and haven't been matched in the current year. And that's one of the things I'm going to come on to actually as one of our challenges, so hold that thought.
You mentioned that the quality over quantity is sort of very much led by careers. Is that not something that's shared by Sharon and the organisation?
It's, the quality bit is, but they, because there are, and this comes on to something I'm going to say in a minute, but because there are, so we did an alumni, well we didn't, they did an alumni survey recently, and one of the questions was, would you be interested in being involved in a careers mentoring scheme? And 2,000 people ticked yes. And they said, well, we've got 2,000 people ready to mentor, but if I've not got 2,000 students that want to be mentored, that's a bit of an issue. So no, they would absolutely agree with the quality side, but I think obviously you have target volunteering, a number of people involved in volunteering, all that kind of thing, and it's a great way for alumni to volunteer back, but it's just I can't necessarily match it with student interest. So that's why I think probably people have tried to say to me, so what are you aiming for in terms of number? Is it going to be 500 next year? I don't really care if it's 500 or not. It's about how many students are interested in doing it and how we can facilitate that in the mentoring community, in the alumni community. That one, and then I might go on if that's all right, because I think I'm going to cover some of the other questions, and then we've got time at the end, and Niall can come back at that point. Is that all right? In terms of people working on it, this is actually the only year we've had one full-time person working on it. So a lot of that growth came from one part-time person. So up until when Niall started in January, we had one part-time person working on the scheme. But when it came to that matching, the manager got involved quite a lot at that point. So we've got a vacancy actually in that area at the moment, which is why they're not here today. But yeah, it was half a person along the way, one person this time. Hold any more questions, because we'll definitely come back to them. I think I might answer some of them just in these next few slides. So the challenges that we have. So one of the challenges has been in engaging with students, and that's what I was talking about. I would love to be able to say there's 500 students who want to do mentoring, and therefore we can have 500 alumni doing that, because if they're prepared to give back in that way, fantastic, we want to encourage that. I think part of the issue is getting students to understand the benefit of mentoring and what actually it can bring for them. So we do a lot of work on marketing the scheme, but I still think we need to keep working on the messaging, because you and I know what mentoring means, but will your average student know what mentoring means? Manual processes, that was the big challenge. That's why we've had to change. So with 138, whatever the number was in the current year, manually matched students and alumni together, we just can't grow, and we do want to grow the scheme because we see the feedback we get, and you can see it's worthwhile, but we can't do that based on manual processes. And alumni demand, it's there. So 2,000 people filled in the survey, which is great. So we know that for us, the easy bit of it is actually getting people to volunteer to do this. But what I don't want, because that wouldn't be good for colleagues in Caro, is if I've got all these alumni sitting in the system as active, well, as willing to be active volunteers, but then I haven't got the students to match with them. So that's why we just need to be a little bit careful. So what we tend to do on that is work very closely with alumni and say, we've got a lot of interest coming from politics, so what can we do in terms of getting people in that area? And actually we came down to an event that they were running for politics alumni. We advertised the scheme at that. We got more mentors in from that area, and so there was a nice fit between the two. So I think we're quite strategic in how we turn on the interest, and then then that sort of, we get the numbers, which is great for both of us, but also, importantly, retain the quality, which is great for both of us as well. That's just an example of some of the literature that we've got out there, some of the images we put out there. So we have some that is focused at the students. So that's obviously a flyer with messaging on the back. So be inspired by alumni, this is what they can do for you. And then we have these kind of flyers that we give out at events that are being hosted by Alumni Relations, so that they've got something to advertise the scheme. Or more often than not, we would go and advertise the scheme. But as I say, we don't struggle so much in getting the volunteers in. In terms of the successes, and there absolutely are the successes, so there was that question that got preempted a minute ago about the breakdown of the scheme and in terms of where students come from. It's quite interesting. I think it's really quite low in engineering. So when I saw those figures this time, I thought we need to look at that. We have a careers team based in engineering. We need to look at who we've got that are mentors in engineering. Is there a mismatch? Do we not have enough of them, or have we not sold the scheme to students enough? So you've got the breakdown there of the overseas and EU as well, and what year they're in. Just a few quotes from the mentor view, so I'll just give you a second or two to read those. It's quite interesting. This top one is somebody who's clearly become a mentor now, but when they first participated, they were a student, which is quite nice. And then just a few from the students as well, or different students, obviously. The whole internship thing is quite interesting, and we do have to be a bit careful on that because, like most universities, we won't promote unpaid internships. So we have to channel something interest that we can't just have mentors giving work experience opportunities. But in this example, it was a referral to the paid graduate internship scheme, and through the coaching, if you like, of the mentor, then that mentee was successful in getting that. So, the future. We've already picked up the international aspect, so certainly there is potential to roll out more of what we do internationally. But for us, it's about how do we upscale this? And this is where over a year and a half ago, or maybe even 2 years ago, we started to look at how could technology help us in this, or could it help us in this? And we looked at more mentoring systems, or systems that thought they were mentoring systems, but not as I know it, than you could have thought possible, really. And every time one of us went to a conference, or one of Alumni Relations went to a conference, we came back with a new system to look at. We are literally days, hours, possibly away from signing with Illuminati. It's literally going through our legal department at the moment. But that's a journey of partnership as well, because I'm just going to talk about some of the things that are important for us not to lose. And it's meant that we're going to be working in partnership with Illuminati to develop something that works for us, because off the shelf it doesn't work for us. It's about what will it bring to our system, and will it help us achieve our core objectives and of our colleagues in our alumni relations as well. So we knew we wanted to upscale. We've got all these willing volunteers, and it's great for students as well, so I absolutely wanted to upscale as well. I can see the value of it. But we want to keep that quality match at the heart of it, because I don't want to kind of stand here maybe next year and say, it's great, we've got 500 active relationships, or at least they were active for a very short space of time. And then they kind of didn't really work, and we've only had 100 people that have completed. That's no gain to me, or that's not a success story. We do, though, feel or recognise that in order to upscale, we need to change a little bit. So we're not going to do the matching anymore, which probably makes Niall and I nervous. That's a change for us. But what we are going to do is a student will, first of all, have to apply to access the system. And then when they want to approach a mentor, they will have to fill in a very, very short application form for that mentor, and we will review that. And we will just review it to check that there is an intention there to take the process seriously, and it's a sensible person that they are approaching for what they want to approach them for. So, for example, if they said on this application form, you know, I'd like to get in touch with you because I don't know what I want to do with my life, our team would probably intervene at that point and say, okay, have you spoken to a careers advisor? Have you done any of the other whole raft of things that we can go on? Maybe you want to do that first. And then at that point, if you still want to speak to or you would like to enter a mentoring relationship, great. On the other hand, if they were to say, I'm really interested in learning what it's like to work in sales and marketing on a day-to-day basis, and so I would value the opportunity to talk to you, etc., then absolutely that would go through. So it's just about checking that intention, I think, really, and making sure that it's not just something that they've signed up for in a moment at Freshers' Fair or whatever, but there is that element of responsibility. So that's where we'll be approving the applications. We've given Daniel a series of complicated flow charts. They seem to get more complicated every time we look at them, so I apologise for that. He's a very patient man. And that will enable that kind of process to be built in for us. We are going to make it more flexible, so we do recognise, as Kings was saying, that for some people a much shorter mentoring relationship is better. We are still going to try and put some kind of timescales on it so that the mentor knows what they are signing up for. But we also want to have a much more straightforward thing in the background called Ask a Professional, where it's literally, I want to ask one question to that mentor, and that's it, job done. So that will be facilitated through the system as well and won't have such a convoluted way of us keeping control on it. There is that ability to be able to prompt when we don't see any activity taking place, so and that can be an automated thing that we can build into the system, because we wouldn't want these relationships to go live, as it were, and then nothing happen for a month or two because it hasn't really worked. So again, it's all very manual at the moment. That happens only when we get in touch with people and check how it's going, so we can build that type of prompting into the system. And of course, it allows us to report on it as well. Reporting, I'm sure in all of our departments, we need to be able to talk about what we're doing and who we're reaching through our various interventions. This is one of, like I said, a host of things that we do with careers. But I think it's key to be able to demonstrate what we are doing and how we're growing it year on year. So hopefully this time next year, we will see that the system has enabled more relationships. I just need to remind myself and my team it's not actually about the system. I mean, it kind of feels like it is at the moment in the office, but it's all about that mentoring conversation that takes place on email or Skype. The system is just what facilitates that to happen and to upscale in the background. And as I said, that's where Illuminati are helping us, and we should see things develop very quickly. So from the point of when we sign, we are looking to do a very, very small pilot within some of our postgraduate community that are still around, and looking to roll out this autumn, so to some students to start with. So yeah, once all the planning has been done, we're kind of all good to know, all good to go. Daniel knows what we're looking to get out from the scheme. We know what alumni relations are needing to get out of it, and every permutation possible of that. So I'm quite excited to see what happens really over the next few months. So that's where we are really. Any other questions? Just to pick up, yeah. Yes, so absolutely. So if we reviewed an application and so what we would do at that, so if somebody's application just wasn't right, kind of thing, we would use our faculty careers team. So we're all part of the careers department. We just split down into faculty. So we would get one of our team members on that to get in touch with the student, perhaps give them some advice or coaching on how to make that better. So I think. The broader careers team are really important to the success of this scheme, even though the nuts and bolts of it will sit now in a system.
I'm really interested because I was actually on the website last week when I was for a presentation to use students.
Okay.
And I really liked your website. I just had a question about it because I felt the sort of issue content really good. I'm guessing that careers yourselves write the content, but do you get a lot of support from graphic design? Do you actually, as a team, do the page yourself?
We do it ourselves.
Yeah. It's excellent.
Thank you.
I understand it really.
Oh, thank you. I will pass that back to the team.
It helps us because we're just relaunching.
Okay.
At the moment, the system hasn't had any input, and actually found yours was a really good one to look at.
Okay.
How like the design are.
Oh, thank you. So no, we do that. Well, I personally don't, but one of the team does it. Yeah. Thank you.
Are you measuring the longer term impact of mentoring? Are you looking at Delhi or?
It's interesting. Not yet, I think, would be the answer. I totally agree with you. I think what we haven't done at this stage, but definitely we need to do, is linking that through to Delhi. And I think actually we need to get better at linking through a number of our sort of student interventions through to Delhi outcomes at the end and be able to track back. And this absolutely would be one. Yeah.
And then you're saying now about people that aren't successful. Do you have any process in place for what you do there? Do you give them other opportunities to engage?
So definitely. So that's why we try not to sign up a load of alumni who we can't use just at the moment because of the mismatch. But we again, like Maria mentioned, we would look for opportunities to use willing alumni to be speakers on panels. So we do spotlights on every particular industry you can possibly think of. So we would often, with the sort of buy-in of our colleagues in alumni relations, we would try and get them involved in that way. Often we can get them involved in writing a blog, so we have a careers blog, and that's quite a nice way that they can do something that actually loads and loads of people will read and meet. And we would try and sort of, again, as Kings was saying, sort of keep them warm and involve them. But also make sure that colleagues in Caro knew exactly where we were with it, so we don't have this whole kind of batch of alumni sat there that are just being not looked after, if you see what I mean. And they would work quite closely with us because effectively they oversee the alumni relationship, so we would make sure they knew who we hadn't used and get their involvement in how we could be using them.
How do you pass that information backwards and forwards in terms of whether that's, I'm relatively new to alumni relations,
Yeah.
so we've got our careers and we've got alumni relations, we will pass contacts over to careers and they will do their thing
Yeah.
and not necessarily pass it back.
So my role is Associate Director in Careers. We have a Deputy Director as well. We sit down once a month with the Director of Student Support, the Head of Alumni Relations, and the Head of Volunteering. So once a month that meeting takes place, and that would be the vehicle for, in all manner of things, for ensuring that we have a good relationship with them. That's been done probably for the last 12 months because of exactly what you're talking about, that some stuff was not kind of getting passed through. And certainly Niall's role, he would meet up quite often with the head of volunteering as well. And they sit on the steering board for this project, so we seem to be talking all the time at the moment.
How do you manage the expectations of the students
No, I suppose two things. I'll perhaps go to Niall as well in a minute in case he wants to add anything on that one. But I think that's where us doing the matching has helped with that quite a bit, because we've been able to say, look, we know your first choice was corporate lawyer or whatever, but actually we've got this person who could be really interesting for you to speak to and have that relationship with. So we would get in touch with the student at that point and try and help them with that. Would you echo that, Niall?
Yeah, and I would also add, sometimes we do have students contact and say, do you have anybody who, for example, you know, is a director of one of the big four or something like that? And you know, if push comes to shove, we don't have them like that. We can maybe look to talk to Karen, see if they have an alumnus who does already volunteer who fits that profile. If not, we'll just go back to the student and let them know what kind of appropriate methods we do have available, and really kind of accentuate their strengths.
Going online, you're obviously going to lose that manual, and how do you envisage you will become going online?
So I think that is one of our possible issues, but I think that's where we need to be looking quite carefully at monitoring the demographic of the student that is applying for the system, alongside what we've got in terms of alumni sectors that are represented. And as Niall said, we can turn on some of those taps along the way. So if we see that we've got a load of students from one area and we're just lacking and we're not getting the match, remember we've got these 2,000 people that are being sort of kept slightly warm in the background. So we would be feeding that through to alumni relations, and they would respond pretty quickly, I think, with that.
I also think there's an opportunity in, if you have 100 mentors, you've got so many students to try and if you get back there because it's not law and law, there's still an opportunity in some of the other mentors.
Yeah, so I suppose the onus on us there is to make sure that when we talk about mentoring, when we talk about the opportunities that come from mentoring, that we try and highlight some case studies of that where we've connected a law and non-law or whatever and what they've got out of the scheme. I think perhaps just one last question, if there is, in this context. I should say as well, I'm around for lunch, but Niall, I'm leaving here all day, so you can ask him lots of questions afterwards, but I have to go and meet some employers this afternoon. Some have gone through to Skype or possibly phone. That's fine. I think on the whole they have stuck to that. I think the advantage to the mentor is that I can answer that email at 11 o'clock at night if I want to, as in if I'm the mentor, if you see what I mean. And the same for the student. Actually, it's not kind of restricted to the work day. In terms of when we do the welcome workshops with the student, we say, if it ever comes up, the whole issue about meeting up, can you let us know? And we'll have a chat about that. And it's literally a handful, if that, of local ones. And we do try and encourage them down that route. So no, I think they have stuck to that. Of course, in our mentor communications, we also talk about why we try to stick to that approach as well.
Okay, I think we'll